Hey, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show, your one-stop shop for all things Commanders. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification button so that you never miss an episode like today's episode with Mo Moten. Mo, what's happening, man?
What's going on, man? Good to be with you. Good to talk football. Of course, still feeling a little frustrated, not a little, a lot frustrated after watching the Raiders lay an egg on Monday Night Football. They need to get it together, and we'll talk about that today.
We will. The matchup of two 1-1 teams trying to get to the same place, and that's the playoffs. It'll be interesting, Mo. I'm curious your thoughts. They bring in, I mean, obviously they brought in a whole new coaching staff this year. AP's out, Pete Carroll in. He brought with him Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly had taken an interview last year for the offensive coordinator job with Washington. Last year, when they brought in Cliff, we got a lot of national people gave us a hard time about Cliff's offense and how it would work the second go round. I feel like that's the same thing Chip's getting now. Like, what did Chip do to get the job other than running an Ohio State offense that was full of first round draft picks? So I guess the question is two part. What did you think about the hiring? What do you think about it now?
I like the hiring because I feel like the Raiders needed an experienced play caller for their offense. Their offense is relatively young. They have two rookie wide receivers that should be playing a lot of snaps this year. Jack Bech in the second round, who we haven't seen much of. And then you have Dante Thornton Jr., who didn't have a great game, was very quiet after one catch for 20 yards. But in the preseason, he was supposed to be the guy that was going to open up this offense. He was the deep threat. There was a lot of buzz about him being a fourth round pick coming out of Tennessee. And you saw the flashes there at training camp. But with Geno Smith's inefficiencies, inaccuracies, they're not using their weapons the way they should. And part of that is on Chip Kelly. And that's part of my frustration with Chip Kelly now is that I feel like he's trying to outsmart the room. Didn't take what the defense gave him in a sense. The Chargers played a lot of too high, cover two defense. And Geno Smith was forcing the ball on the outside toward the sidelines. The middle of the field was open. The Chargers had a linebacker in Denzel Perryman who was out with an injury. Dan Henley, while he made some plays, was playing with an illness. And you saw continuously design plays to go on the outside and throw the deep ball. And it was just too aggressive. Pete Carroll talked about in the post-game press conference that the Raiders weren't patient with the run game and they were too aggressive on the outside. And while Geno Smith made his mistakes and it's on the quarterback to pull the trigger, a lot of that is also on Chip Kelly. I haven't changed my stance on Chip Kelly. I still think it's a good hire, but he has to settle into the offense and understand the coverages that Geno Smith is facing and work accordingly to that.
I guess there couldn't be much of a bigger transition from Antonio Pete Pierce to Pete Carroll. Players love Pete Carroll, though.
Mm-hmm.
You hire Pete Carroll if you plan on winning now. It feels like, I mean, it feels weird to look forward, right? Because everybody's trying to win now. But Pete Carroll ain't got but so much time. I don't care how young and how many wind sprints he's doing on the sideline. What has the how have the players felt about Pete since he's gotten there? Because again, a huge transition from Pierce to Pete Carroll.
And I say this, and you're probably going to squint your eyes when I say this, but there are some similarities between Pete Carroll and Antonio Pierce. Maybe
Okay.
not in the looks department, but as far as getting his players amped up for the game, Pete Carroll brings a lot of that same energy that Antonio Pierce brought, but he brings that with the experience. One of three coaches to win a natty on the college level and a Super Bowl. So he has the resume. And again, players in that locker room love Pete, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Your best player, Max Crosby, loves Pete Carroll. Felt the energy right away. Now, of course, they gave Max Crosby a contract, which helped his feelings about this regime. But Pete Carroll is good for this football team because he's proven that he's a program builder. USC, Seattle, the Raiders needed a program builder at the head coaching position. They had that in Pete Carroll. But like you said, he doesn't have a lot of time. He's a young 74, just turned 74 on Monday. May have 2 to 3 more optimal years of coaching left because we all know this profession can grind you down. The Raiders have to win now, and that's why they went out and got Geno Smith. That's why they went out and got some of these veterans on the defensive side of the ball. But they have to win right away. There's going to be some growing pains. We understand that. But they don't have the leeway with Pete Carroll's age to turn this into a 3-4 year plan. This year, I expect them to take a step up from last year. I know it's a low bar. They only won 4 games last year. I expected 7-8 wins this year. They still have some holes, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. You're going to see that on Sunday. Secondary can allow some big plays over the top. You saw Quentin Johnson score a big touchdown on Monday night. Keenan Allen, early touchdown. But in the second half of these games, the defense has held up well. They've only allowed 9 points in the second half of these games. 3 points to the Chargers, 6 to the Patriots in week 1. So Pete Carroll bringing his influence to the defense is a good thing for this team and specifically that side of the ball.
Mo, I went and looked at the depth chart. There are a lot of names on there that I never heard of, and I watch a lot of football and I do a lot of draft shows on here. So I was surprised. Is now listen, we have the same problem in Washington. Don't get me wrong, we've had it for years. Are the coverage bared because of poor drafting? Is this a problem that they're trying to fix because of people that were there before, or just one of those deals that it is a extremely young team?
It's a young team. I will say this. I feel like the Raiders could have done a little more to address their secondary. So Eric Stokes is their top cornerback. Now he's held up pretty well to his credit. But Eric
What
Stokes
you
is
got?
their top cornerback. And if you put him on any other team, is he your lead cornerback? Is he your CB1? In Green Bay, he had issues staying healthy, so that's another concern for me. Hasn't been able to stay healthy for 2 of his 4 years in Green Bay. Was average decent in the other 2 years. And then you have Kyu Blue Kelly, who's actually been a surprise for the Raiders secondary. He's played pretty well. He's been a surprise for me, at least, exceeding expectations. But they have an issue, I think, at the slot position. Jeremy Chin is playing in the slot. He's your best safety, but he has to play slot corner nickelback because Darnay Holmes is a below average slot cornerback. So they had plenty of opportunities to address the slot cornerback position, didn't do it. Their linebacking core, it's a veteran group. It's a solid group. Jermaine Pratt, Jamal Adams has transitioned from safety to linebacker. You got Devin White in there who's been playing well. You got Landon Roberts who was in Pittsburgh last year. I like that group. They're also trying to figure out who can rush the passer outside of Max Crosby. Tyree Wilson is the big ticket first round pick from a few years ago. He only had 14 snaps against the Chargers. Pete Carroll wants to get him more snaps. I expect to see him a lot on the field a lot more against your Commanders. But who else on that defensive line is going to pressure the quarterback? Adam Butler's had a pretty good run with the Raiders over the last year or so. But they need it to be a committee approach to getting to Jaden Daniels if he's out there, or Marcus Mariota if he's filling in for Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, it's interesting. Usually, it's a good thing to have a backup quarterback kind of be the same style as your starting quarterback. That way, you're not kind of starting over again. The only thing is, and I say this because you mentioned Jaden Daniels and possibility that Marcus Mariota may play in his stead this week, is that it doesn't really affect the way that the defensive play caller might have to adjust if you say go from a RG3 to a Kirk Cousins, totally different game plans. I would think that it would be helpful to the play caller either way, whether it's Daniels that rolls out there Sunday or Marcus Mariota. Game plan for the defense probably doesn't change that much.
Doesn't change much. You also have to understand that the Raiders have been very good at stopping the run. Not to say that the Commanders' run game is not anything to worry about. I'm assuming we're going to see more of Bill in the backfield with Austin
Yes,
Eckler out.
yes,
But they're the Raiders, as I said, have to figure out, other than Max Crosby, who's going to rush the passer. The problem I have with the schematics, Max Crosby has been dropping in coverage quite a bit. He did that a lot against the Chargers. And I think the idea thinking behind that is if he's drawing double teams, you're going to allow other guys to make plays on the quarterback if he's drawing the double team out in coverage. So I don't like that because you want your best pass rusher to do what he does best and what
yes.
you're paying for, and that's rush the passer. But I'm interested to see how Patrick Graham handles a mobile quarterback because historically Patrick Graham has done well with keeping quarterbacks contained. You saw Jayden Daniels not be himself last Thursday against the Packers. Maybe that was because of the injury. But with Marcus Mariota out there, they're going to have to be able to still contend with his legs because even though he's older in age, he can still move and he's still athletic.
That Packers defense is nasty, and they're going to give people a lot of fits when they got Mike on that. It was not fun to watch unless you were a Packers fan on Thursday. I can assure you that, Mo. Interesting. I was reading the other day, and of course, from the outside, we don't generally get into things like this to the degree and the minutia, but interesting. I was not familiar with a lot of names on the offensive line. A couple of them, like the kid from Oregon. I was surprised he's not playing center. I think they got him at guard. Um, Pete Carroll's son is the offensive line coach. I heard that has not gone over all that well.
It's a question, probably the biggest question I had about the Raiders coming into the season outside of their secondary. So I talked about the secondary, and I'll talk a lot about Brendan Carroll. He's been an assistant in Seattle, an assistant offensive line coach, I believe, under Tom Cable. He goes to college. He's coaching the offensive line, the offense at Arizona and Washington. And I said, yeah, well, that's fine, but it's different beast in the NFL. He's not a qualified NFL offensive line coach right now. And there have been a lot of questions about the decision making the Raiders have made since he's been brought on as Pete Carroll's son and an offensive line coach. As you mentioned, Jackson Powers Johnson won the Remington Award in college, best center in college football. They moved him to guard, and it wasn't like it was a competition. We thought over on Raiders world that it was going to be a competition. That they mentioned Jordan Meredith being a possible center, but Jackson Powers Johnson played the position in college. He played the position last year as a rookie. He had 11 penalties, but he was pretty good at center. It wasn't even a competition. Pete Carroll spoke as if it was Jordan Meredith's job to lose, even though Jordan Meredith played guard the previous year. And we found that baffling. A lot of people question maybe Jackson Powers Johnson's in the doghouse. There's something going on we don't know about. We still don't know to this day what's going on. But Jackson Powers Johnson has a concussion right now anyway, so he missed the last game. Pete Carroll expects him to be back. And if he is back, he's probably going to be back at right guard. Jordan Meredith had issues with the snap against the Chargers, snapping the ball off his leg. He had a bad game. He had a good game against the Patriots in week 1, bad game against the Chargers in week 2. I don't know what to expect in week 3. But the guard play has been poor. Dylan Parham at left guard has struggled in both games. He had 2 huge offensive holding penalty calls. Can't handle stunts, can't handle twists, can't handle blitz pickup. He should be benched on that offensive line if they make any changes. But the guard play, the interior of the Raiders offensive line, big question mark coming into this matchup against the Commanders.
Interesting, because of the one thing that the Commanders do well is get up through the middle of the field with those big D tackles, Javon Kinlaw, Deron Payne.
Yeah.
Interesting to see how that holds up. Obviously, you mentioned Bill for the Commanders earlier. You have your own version, and Ashton Genty. Look, it's two games, right? So I mean, I'm sure that Raiders fan base is upset that they haven't actually seen prime Barry Sanders in 2 weeks here. That's how we do. What is it that you've seen from watching the tape that gives you encouragement, and maybe why it's been a slow start?
Encouragement is when Ashton Genty gets the ball, he could do something with it. He can make something out of nothing. I think we saw that at Boise State when they played Penn State in the playoffs. Didn't have much room to run, but made the best of that situation. He has to do a lot of that with the Raiders' offensive line. As I said, a lot of question marks on the interior. So if the Raiders can give him average run blocking, I think he can break out for a big game. Now he only averaged 2 yards per carry against the Patriots, but he did score a touchdown. He only had 11 carries against the Chargers. I think the Raiders have to balance their offense. You don't want to see Geno Smith throw the ball 43 times, especially if he's making the decisions that he made last Monday. You want to have a more close to 50-50 balanced offense, especially when you spent the 6th overall pick on your running back, right? He has to get more involved. The problem with Ashton Genty, and I think this is also maybe an issue with Bill, as I spoke to another Commanders writer reporter, that the Raiders don't quite trust him in pass protection yet. Either that or he hasn't proven that he can be serviceable in the pass protection. So as you know, in order for a running back to get on the field in those third downs, he has to be reliable in pass protection, at least serviceable. Doesn't have to be the greatest pass blocker, but has to be able to stick his nose in there and protect the quarterback. On 16 pass blocking snaps, Ashton Genty has allowed 3 pressures, including 1 sack. That's not good for a running back. You're not going to see the field on third down with those numbers. So he has to improve his pass protection, and he knows that. He ran the wrong way on one specific play against the Chargers. He understands he's making some rookie mistakes, but I think with more action, he'll get a lot better.
You mentioned Thornton at the top of the show. My brother is a Tennessee alumni. That's a whole different story. If you watch the show, you know I'm a huge Georgia Bulldogs fan, so that's always great. Shout out to my dogs for not making me look bad against my brother this weekend. Game was great. One thing I'll tell you about Thornton, though, having watched a ton of them, is I mean, obviously the speed is electric. The route running had. I think that's probably why he's a 4th round pick, right? Because the route running wasn't great yet. How has that looked? and because they're going to need him if they want that offense to be anything close to what it can be.
Now, the general manager, John Spytek of the Raiders, said that they're going to work with his route running, but they also feel like he can see the field early. And as I said, he was the darling of the offseason, the training
Mhm.
camp. He generated a ton of buzz. He's the guy that's going to open up the offense. And to his credit, I feel like he's been getting open. Geno Smith hasn't been able to get the ball to him necessarily in a good spot, poor ball placement. But I think over time they'll figure out ways to use him. Chip Kelly is a creative play caller. Didn't show it on Monday, but I trust Chip Kelly to be able to use him strategically to get him involved, despite the limited route tree that he has. But the Raiders have to pick and choose their spots. As I said at the top of the show, they can't just go bombs away, consecutive passes thrown downfield to Dante Thornton Jr. and Trey Tucker. They have to mix it up, go to the underneath routes. You have Michael Mayer, even though Brock Bowers is banged up, not quite himself. You got Michael Mayer, who was a second round pick not too long ago. You can run with some wide receiver crossers. You can throw to the running backs out of the backfield. There's so many things you can do to move the chains and keep drives going. And that's what the Raiders have to focus on coming up. But Dante Thornton Jr., you know what he can do. Stretch the field, but you have to choose your spots so that he can hurt defenses.
Brock Bowers is obviously not healthy. Even when healthy, I've been surprised with the two tight ends they have. Maybe it's not, maybe the numbers are different and it just feels that way to me, but I would be living in 12 personnel and just beating people with those two incredible tight ends. It feels like there's an opportunity for that. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like Mayer doesn't get a ton of snaps to be using those kind of looks.
He doesn't get nearly enough snaps as you think he should get, especially when with Brock Bowers not being 100%. I feel like we're going to see more Michael Mayer against the Chargers. As I said, one linebacker was out with an injury, the other one was dealing with an illness slash the flu. Why is
Right.
Michael Mayer not eating in the middle of the field in the pass catching game? And I think this is part of the Chip Kelly experience where sometimes he tries to outsmart the room and do what he wants to do instead of doing what the defense is giving him. And of course, Geno Smith has to make better decisions, but this is my frustration with Chip Kelly. It's right there in front of you. And I say this all the time. I understand that I'm not a coach on the field, but sometimes the guys on the field, on the sidelines, the coaches make football harder than it has to be, right? Balance the offense, take what the defense gives you, exploit the opponent's weaknesses. They get a scouting report of their opponent every week. You should know where the weaknesses are. Attack those weaknesses.
Are you a Geno Smith guy?
I'm not saying Geno Smith is a top 8 quarterback, but I think he's fine. I wouldn't call myself a Geno Smith guy because I know there are going to be some 3 interception games in there, and I tried to warn Raider Nation, hey, you're going to love Geno Smith until he has that first 3 interception game. Now, I didn't think it would be this early in the season we'd see it against the Chargers under the Monday Night Football bright lights, but I would say Geno Smith is enough to get the Raiders to be competitive in that division. It's a tough division. You got some prime coaches over there. Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid, of course, has won a bunch of Super Bowls. So I get it. The Raiders needed a serviceable quarterback so they wouldn't be an embarrassment in the AFC West. And I would say Geno Smith is a little better than just serviceable. We saw what he can do in Seattle. But there are going to be times where you're going to scratch your head and think, man, what is Geno Smith doing out there? What is he seeing? And we've already had one of those games. So it's a bit unnerving that this early in the season we're seeing that, but let's also understand it's new teammates, it's a new team, it's a new offense for him. Though he's been around the block, hopefully he can settle down and have better performances. He looked pretty good against the Patriots. We need more of good Geno Smith versus the Patriots versus what we saw on Monday.
The line went from like 6.5 to 3.5 once word came out that the MRI happened on the knee for Daniels. What if Pete came and said, Mo, how do we beat the Commanders on Sunday? You say what?
One, balance with the run. I understand you got Deron Payne, Javon Kinlaw, and they're pretty good in the middle, but you have to have balance in the run game. And as I've said against the Chargers, it doesn't change to me. Attack the middle of the field if you can. Test Marshawn Lattimore if you can. Marshawn Lattimore, in my opinion, maybe you disagree with this, but he's not the same player, prototype player he was in New Orleans.
No, we had hoped in camp it looked like maybe he'd get there, but I don't think he's got there.
Test Marshawn Lattimore on the outside. I'm not saying go bombs away like he did against the Chargers, but see where he's at in this game very early and see if he's on the cusp of a bounce back year or if he's just continuously on the decline. And until he proves that he can cover his assignment, then you go there, but you mix it up with some underneath routes to make sure you mix it up with that Commanders defense. I'm expecting the Commanders to show a lot of cover too, because it's a copycat league, and that's what the Chargers had, success with. So this is why I say mix it up, attack the middle of the field, but take some D shots toward Marshawn Lattimore as well.
You think this is a high scoring game?
No, I think this is low scoring. The Raiders are on a short week. Brock Bowers isn't himself right now. They're
You
going
think he
cross
plays?
country. I think he does play, but you get a watered down version of him where he's not as explosive as he can be, but he could still be a factor in the red zone.
If he needed to miss a game, and this is kind of why I've been pushing that Jaden Daniels, if not 100%, if not 80%, just played Mariota. It's a long season. Would it have been better to have rested Bowers last week and saved him? Because short weeks on the road, never a good thing. Or do you just bite the bullet and say, listen, we're going to have to rest him. That's the only way this thing gets better. And give him the week off this week, or is he just too important to the game plan?
I would say he's too important to the game plan in the sense that if the injury cannot get worse if he's playing, you put him out there even at 50, 60%
What
because
is
the
the
defense.
injury?
It's a knee injury. They haven't specified it yet. There's been
Right.
speculation that it's a PCL, but that hasn't been confirmed. All we know right now is a knee injury, and he was wearing a brace during that Chargers game. So he could still move and he could still be a factor. And as I said, if it can't get any worse, then you just put him out there because then the Commanders have to account for him being out there. And there's one pass specifically where Geno Smith could have hit him between the numbers and he scores a touchdown, and people are thinking, oh, he's
Yep.
still pretty good even with that injury. So it's a matter of Geno Smith, again, ball placement, putting the ball in between the numbers for Brock Bowers, and he can still be effective. I would have him out there unless I'm risking losing him for multiple weeks because of a re-aggravation of the injury.
All right, let's get out on here. What do you like the score to be?
I like the score to be about, let's say, 23-20. I have the Raiders winning this one if Marcus Mariota is the guy. I'm not saying Marcus Mariota can't do the job. We saw Marcus Mariota come in as kind of like a relief pitcher last year when Jay Daniels, I believe, had a rib injury, and Marcus Mariota played pretty well. But I feel like with the Raiders coming in, I know it's coming cross country. I understand that, but looking at the tape and looking at the film, this is a team, as I said, that has to have some urgency, and I think Chip Kelly makes the corrections there. And the passing game looks a lot better, and we see more of the Geno Smith we saw in Week 1. Again, Commanders, good team, made the playoffs last year. I expect the Commanders to be back there. But this is a game, I don't call it, I hate to say must win this early in the season, but this is the game that the Raiders have to have coming off that stinker, and I expect them to be a lot better on Sunday.
Yeah, I looked at that upcoming schedule. It doesn't get any easier, does it?
They have to win these games early because in the second half of that schedule, if they want to make that surprising playoff push, they got to play teams like the Eagles and the Texans on that schedule. I know the Texans don't look good right now, but they're getting Christian Kirk back. That defense is pretty good. The Raiders have to win these early games, especially with the possibility of a backup quarterback coming in and playing for a star quarterback who won Offensive Rookie of the Year last year. So the Raiders have to take advantage of these opportunities.
Where does that division rank in football? Because it went from like 2 years ago, it was the Chiefs and everybody else. It's a
Mm,
pretty tough division in my mind.
Absolutely, as I said, we all know what the Chiefs do with Andy Reid. They're 0-2 right now, but there's no panic button in Kansas City
Oh,
with Xavier Worthy and Rasheed Rice eventually coming back, right? Then I've picked the Chargers to win the AFC West this year because I just think they have a complete football team. I was a little worried when Rashawn Slater went down with his torn patella tendon, but I think they still got it. You're seeing Justin Herbert play pretty well.
God,
Seeing
Joe
their
Alt's
defense
so
do what
good.
they do. Joe Alt filling in there, moving from right tackle to left tackle. Denver Broncos defense, even though they didn't show it against the Colts last week, is going to be pretty good. Bo Nix showed a lot last year. Not too hot this year, but you got Sean Payton there who's won a Super Bowl and understands how to get the most out of him. The Raiders in another division probably are a 9-win team, but because they're in the AFC West with these squads and these head coaches, man, I think it's tough. I think it's the toughest division now that the Vikings, I think, are going to take a step back without Sam Darnold being there. JJ McCarthy's got an ankle injury now. They have Carson Wentz in there. The Bears, Caleb Williams is still trying to figure it out. The Detroit Lions have two new coordinators, offense and defense. So I think that division takes a step down, and the AFC West is the toughest division in the NFL right now.
When is your show on today? Tell the folks at home where to find you.
So we just recorded the show. It drops on Thursday, Silver and Black Today, with my co-host Scott Branson, where we break down Raiders Commanders. We talked about, we didn't want to talk about it, but we went over the Chargers game as well and what the Raiders can fix offensively. And we also talked about how the defense is exceeding expectations. So there is some positives there. I'm also on Bleacher Report. I have the post games there. Every post game right after the whistle blows, I'm on there talking Raiders. During the week on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I drop a video there with the biggest discussion surrounding Raiders Twitter, whether it's Ashton Genty not getting enough carries, his pass protection issues, Chip Kelly's mind-boggling play calling. We talk about it. I talk about it there, all over there on Bleacher Report.
No, this is great, man. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Of course, appreciate you, George, having me.